with Luca's, diagnosis of Down syndrome. No, he says, Luca would be my first infant with Down syndrome, and my expectations would be there that the possibilities are great, that we would see good things in your son. I researched all I researched. My gut feeling said, there's nothing else out there that could possibly help my son. As long as it can't hurt him, that there's going to be no side effects, I'm not going to let this chance pass us by. And my husband agreed. He says, I don't want to go through life wondering, what if? Especially with everything we're hearing that stem cells are doing. They're injecting stem cells into mice and they're walking. I mean, there's numerous things that we're coming across.
It was very difficult to make that decision because we didn't know the after effects of doing the stem cell therapy. We didn't have anyone that we can talk to who went through it. There was nobody else with a child with Down syndrome that experienced this. So we were the first ones going through this. So very difficult. Whenever you have a child that's going to undergo something, whether it's therapy or surgery, it's the toughest decision to make.
Eventually, Clayton spiraled down into a vegetative state, lifeless, and even unable to eat.
There was probably a period of about 16 months where Ozzy and I never once heard his voice. He never made a noise. He never expressed joy or pain or sorrow or discomfort, and that was hard because it was such a stark contrast from who he was, and we just wanted to get him back.
Desperate to return their baby to health, George and Azita first tried all the traditional methods of treatment, but with no results. Then they turned to alternative remedies, but to no avail. Eventually, the father is turned to Dr. William C. Rader of Medra Inc., who has successfully treated many diseases with embryonic stem cells.
In reality, I don't do anything. And the reason I'm saying that is all I do is put in the cells. And then nature, God, or whatever you want to say, takes care of the rest. I don't tell them where to go. I don't give them a diagnosis. Yes, I do select cells, but it's significantly zero compared to what the cells themselves do.
My first treatment, I noticed result about 3 months after. I was sitting outside with my mother and a fly landed on my leg and I felt it. I felt the fly. I looked down on my quad and I was just like, oh my gosh. I was like, oh my, I was just freaking out. I'm like, Mom, I just felt a fly. It's a totally weird conversation, but I thought that was the most amazing thing that, I have felt in a long time, to be able to feel something.
The fetal cells do two basic things. First, they release what's called cytokines, or trophic or growth factors, and then they actually replace damaged tissue. Now, in the case of Ricky, she had some of the nerve fibers that were alive but dormant, sleeping, hibernating. Years ago, if you had a heart attack, they told you that's it, the heart cannot come back. Then we did coronary bypass surgery, brought oxygen to the area, and the muscle came back. So in a similar way, these cytokines or growth factors can wake up these areas. The next thing that happens is that she's actually growing new nerve fibers.
When we were leaving the Dominican Republic, we were sitting in line, at the airport, and it happened to be some sort of holiday in San Juan that day. So we're sitting there, and all of a sudden, coming down, you're sitting by your gate, down the hall, they have the dancers, and, they're celebrating whatever holiday was. My mom and I nearly fell off the chair. Luca was sitting there, and with a quickness that he had never, ever, ever shown, turned his head to see where that music and that sound came from. He nearly broke his neck. I looked at my son and I thought, okay, he just didn't do that. He woke up. He was alive in his eyes. And that's the only way I could explain it. Here was this little boy that up to this point just had kind of like a stare. Almost instantaneously. It was like, boom. Luca is alive in his eyes. And again, this is the only way I can explain it. That baby woke up. There's somebody there. There's somebody back there. After the second treatment, I called Dr. Rader. I said, I know you're going to think this is crazy, but Luca's head's changing. That typical flatness that children with Down syndrome have. They have a very flat forehead and a flat bridge of the nose, and typically the back of their head all tends to be flat, is rounding. I said, his forehead has rounded. I said, but maybe I'm just hallucinating. His ears are growing. Usually their ears are low set. The one ear has grown up above, you know, that low set mark. Again, looking at all this, not believing that it's possibly happening. I'm thinking, I mean, is this happening? Is it not happening?
Miraculously, Clayton showed much improvement after the first stem cell treatment.
We saw not only that the frequency of the seizures were reduced, but also the types of seizures were reduced. And as we saw the seizure reduction, we also saw that his muscles in his body were becoming stronger. Within just a few weeks, we saw that he got neck control.
And as of January 1st, 2005, Clayton was seizure-free, and he became responsive to his world.
For 2 years, he had no emotion, no reaction, no sound. He was completely silent. Just about a month ago, he got his tickle back. I was playing with him, and I was tickling his stomach, and he started laughing. And I just about died.
After my second treatment, I started noticing big differences. Muscle mass in my quads, nerve pain, was not dependent on anyone to help me get around or to saddle up a horse and get up on by myself. It's definitely very hard to persuade people that stem cells is the only thing that's working. But I know deep in my heart that if it wasn't for the stem cell treatment, I would be surviving in and out of the chair. That is not for me.